Here we go. Okay, Corey, there we go. It's recording. Okay, so we're talking about stress, right? Catabolic stress is essentially the fight flight response, and it shows up in two different ways. The fight flight response, it could be fight flight freeze, is, let's say you're about to get in a car accident, right? Somebody cuts you off and you're about to get in a car accident. You slam on the brakes and you swerve, your heart rate goes up, your adrenaline goes up. All of that is good because it saves your life. But think about this. What if that feeling you have, that my heart rate's up, my blood pressure's up, I'm breathing, kind of heavy breathing. What if we stayed in that stress space all the time? What would happen? So feel free to answer in the chat. What would happen if we stayed in that high stress space, that catabolic stress space all the time? In fact, I'm going to put catabolic here in the so you can see it. What would happen? What do you think? Anybody? If we stayed in that catabolic stress space all the time, where we were like in the fight flight response all the time, what do you think would happen? Exhausted, exactly. Literally make ourselves sick. Yes, implode. I mean, I'm laughing, but exactly, we would. And so what we're seeing now is a lot of us walking around in exactly that space, in that catabolic space where we feel like we don't have control over anything, and we're on high alert all the time. It's a very physically and emotionally dangerous place to be. It leads to a true clinical burnout, and it's very problematic. One of the problems is things are coming at us so fast and furious in the news and everything, that's just really adding to this piece. Nervous breakdowns, Alex, exactly. We see this frequently in the mental health field, is that we're so stuck in that high catabolic stress space. We can't focus. We can't do the things that we want to do. And so we want to be aware of what happens for many of us. Is, so let's say I come to work and I get into like a little negative interaction with my boss. My stress level goes up. And then what happens? So my stress level goes up, and then I stay at that high space, and then something else happens and my stress level goes up again, and I stay at that higher space, and I never really release the stress. And so what happens is it builds, it builds, it builds. That's when all the things you just listed happen. So the key is, you're going to hit those, about to get in a car accident moments in your day. The key is to be aware when you've hit them, and then make sure you do something to release it, come back down so that you even out. And then, you're going to hit more stress throughout the day. It's going to happen. By the way, if you've seen my carpet move, that's actually my dog behind me. So just so you're aware. So, okay, that's catabolic energy. The other kind of energy I'm putting in the chat is anabolic energy. And anabolic energy is growth producing. It's really where we're creative. We're collaborative, creative, compassionate. I'm using all C words. I don't mean to be. It's really where we're functioning at our highest level. So one big piece of this to think about is, throughout the day, check in. Am I experiencing catabolic energy, or am I experiencing anabolic energy? And if I'm only experiencing the catabolic energy, what can I do to release it? And we're going to talk about the things that influence catabolic versus anabolic energy. So I'm going to take you through those. Let me switch my screen here. So we're going to talk about this concept of influencers. What influences our stress levels? What keeps us from functioning at our highest? I mean, let me share a little example with you. My youngest son, right before COVID, he took a year off of college. Don't ask about the stress. Took a year off of college, and he backpacked through Europe right before COVID hit. In fact, we called him patient zero, which he didn't really like, because everywhere he had been, COVID was there a week later. So we were like, well, maybe it's our son who's dragging it around. It wasn't. Anyway, so I asked him what's the most important thing he learned about himself when he was traveling through Europe by himself. And he said that sometimes I just need a glass of water. And it was a really wise thing, because often something's influencing our energy. We tend to think it's something really big and maybe bad, when sometimes we need to breathe. We need to have a glass of water. And it's really being aware of what's influencing our energy. So I'm going to talk to you about 6 different influencers on our stress, 6 different influences on our energy. And then you can start thinking in terms of like going through the list of these 6 and asking yourself, what's influencing my energy? Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Am I tired? Have I been watching the news endlessly and I'm so stressed out? Figuring it out and then doing something about it is what we're going to look at. So here's the types of influencers. Let's do a little goofy exercise around this. So wherever you're sitting, pick something up, maybe your cell phone. Okay, pick up your cell phone and just hold it up, like hold it up. So it's straining your arm just a bit. Okay, hold up your cell phone and just keep it held up while I tell you what these 6 influencers are. Okay, don't put your phone or whatever you're holding up. Don't put it down. All right, so 6 different influencers. The first is the spiritual influencer. This is really where we're attached to our values, our beliefs, what matters most in the world to us. The next one is our mental influencers, and this is how we process our thoughts. Not necessarily what we think about, but how we process our thoughts. The third one is environmental influencers, the lighting, the temperature, maybe decor around us is the environmental influencer. The next one is the physical influencer, and that's let's say you have a headache, or you bump your arm, or you have a sore that hurts, something like that, a physical influencer. The next one is the social influencer, and that's keep your arm up, by the way, if you're holding this up, keep it up, hold it up. The social influencer is getting, relationships, friends, people we connect with. And the final one is the emotional influencer, and that's our feelings that come up throughout life. Okay, what I want you to do is put your phone or whatever you had, put it down, and let's check in. So how many of you felt like you could really concentrate on what I was saying while you were holding this up? How many of you felt like you could concentrate on what I was saying? Nope. Yeah, no, exactly. How come? How come you couldn't concentrate? Hard to focus. Yeah, absolutely. How come? I was thinking about my arm, right? Right, because your arm, it was probably uncomfortable, right? So your arm was out here, right? Thinking about soreness and keeping it up. Typing to trying to type one-handed to take notes. I wanted to put my arm down, didn't want to drop my phone. So you're actually sharing here, wondering where I was going with it. There's a method to the madness. Those are all influencers on your ability to focus. So some of you were physically, right? It physically hurt. Some of you were thinking, I didn't want to drop my phone. Some of you were trying to do something else. So there was an influencer there. So this is why awareness of what influences our energy, what influences our stress is so crucial. Because even just something as simple as holding something up for, I don't even know if it was 60 seconds. It might have been a little longer than that. Distracts our energy, takes our energy away from what we're doing. So think about when big things are happening, how much it distracts us from really being present, really being in the moment. So let me just stop here for a second before I go through each of the 6 influencers and you can hear them in a little more detail. What questions do you have so far, or comments on anything that I've shared with you? It also gives me a chance to have my iced tea product placement. All right, questions or comments so far? All right, let's talk in more detail about the 6 influencers, because when you start to get these and think about them, you're able to manage your stress and be more mentally healthy than you would otherwise. So the first influencer is the spiritual influencer. And really what this connects to our purpose, our alignment with our own vision, with our values, with our goals. What do we want to be remembered for? Who are we really at the core of ourselves? Big picture questions that if we aren't aligned, we have a something seems to be missing feeling. So we're seeing this right now in our society with this, what's it called when everyone, the big resignation, I think that's what people are calling it. Because this influencer causes stress when it leads to questioning or conflict within our values, when we're not attached to our purpose or our goals. So let me ask this question here. Let me stop the share. Let me ask this question. How might you recognize if the spiritual influencer is in play? Or how might you show up if this influencer is out of alignment for you? So how might you recognize if it's in play? By the way, you won't lose your job if you say, you're having a moment. I'm saying that with the hope that you won't lose your job. Or how would you know if you're out of alignment with the spiritual influencer? You can answer in the chat. How would you know you're out of alignment with the spiritual influencer, or if it's in play in some way? You can answer in the chat, the spiritual influencer. And again, tied to your values, your belief system. I'm guessing some of you are probably out of alignment over the last couple of years in one way or another, right? Of a belief system about medicine, science, vaccines, not vaccines, masks, not masks. Anybody know when they're out of alignment with the spiritual influencer? Anybody? I got an example. I'll never forget when I wasn't long out of college and I worked in finance, which was really dreadful for me. And I just had no interest in my work, none whatsoever. There was no connection. It wasn't tied to my values. It wasn't tied to what I really cared about in life. And then I went back to school and went into psychology, and I was completely motivated and completely connected. And that was where that spiritual piece it was out of alignment. By the way, I majored in finance because my dad told me I should. Okay, no one's got a spiritual. Here we go, Kylie. It's kind of like asking us to talk about religion and politics. Oh, let's stop and talk about that, right? We're afraid to confront spiritual. I think this is a good point. So it doesn't have to be religion or politics. It can be anything. What matters most to you? What are your top 5 values? Are you aligned with them in what you do every day? And if not, is there a way that you can bring some alignment in to what matters most for you? So even asking yourself, what are the top things I value? There's tons of value exercises you can do online. But once you get that, my top value is actually fun. It's not family. I love my family, but it's fun. If I could have fun with my family, top 2 values. And so thinking about, am I doing things that align with that? Yeah, Alex, this is great. Recognizing when you're lacking fulfillment. Yeah, like what something's missing. What is it? Can I get it at work? Maybe not. Can I get it somewhere else? That fulfillment piece. Okay, how do I do that? When I need to give my mind a rest from overthinking. Yes, of really connecting to that quieter space in ourselves, which, by the way, if one more client tells me that they have no space or time to just think, I don't know, we're all going to just have to take a month off is what I've decided. Or like Europe, we're going to take the whole summer off because clearly we need this. Let's see, Kylie, I found myself making boundaries and stopping people I thought of as friends and pushing them back when I disliked their behavior. So that's a great example of spiritual and social, the combination of the two. I think for a lot of us over the last couple of years, I pulled a few people out because just our values were so different. So let's go to the next influencer. And the next one is the mental influencer. And the mental influencer, this is related to being alert, your concentration, your memory, your mental stimulation. It's when this influencer will really cause stress when you're multitasking, or you stretch yourself too thin, or you have conflicting demands that are literally in your head, pulling in your head. You're distracted, or when a task is either too boring or too challenging, and you just find yourself overwhelmed with it. So think of times when you have not been mentally aware, right? What might be some examples of when you haven't been mentally aware? And really, here's the big question: how can you increase your mental awareness? I know for me, it's sleep. If I don't get enough sleep, I'm not mentally aware. Also, coffee. I must have coffee. And even water. If you're dehydrated, you're not mentally aware. Yeah, caffeine for sure. Maybe you've just concentrated all day, or God forbid, you've looked at a screen all day. That can affect your mental awareness. Other examples people can think of around the mental awareness piece: fresh air. Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, I gave a talk, a 30-hour talk indoors a couple months ago in this tiny room with 50 people, no fresh air and no natural light. Oh, that was also the environmental influencer at play, but it was really hard to stay mentally focused. I know, but all of you too. I am the world's worst multitasker. So when I multitask, it's inevitable that I make some sort of a mistake because I wasn't paying attention and I didn't have my mind focused in one place. And I think, back to our phones, how many of us are multitasking with our phones nearby with notifications? And so we're maybe not fully present. So that's the mental influencer. Let's take a look at, and some of you are even mentioning versions of this, the environmental influencer. So this is an interesting one because we have had over the last 2 years a big, huge, ginormous environmental influencer going on called COVID. It's a pandemic, a worldwide pandemic. It has influenced us in so many ways. It has especially though influenced us environmentally, what's around us. So this is related to like our settings or the conditions of our living or work arrangements. It causes stress when you encounter an environment that you believe prevents you from functioning in an optimal manner. A manner, not matter. So examples could be so many people were, I do a lot of webinars, and we would see people like in closets during COVID because there was nowhere else in their house to get on a Zoom call, or sharing space with all their children running around. Or maybe it's too hot in your environment, or too cold in your environment, or your lighting's not good. Or there's, let's say, a lot of stuff and it's distracting you. Let me hear what some of you would say gets in the environmental influencers that work for you or don't work for you. You can put it in the chat. Environmental influencers that help, or environmental influencers that like drag your energy down. What you got? You can put in the chat. Oh, I see Michelle put exercise. That's a mental one, a physical one, right? A lot of those. Kylie, headphones. Somebody just told me to get the noise canceling headphones for on the plane, and you can sleep and relax more. Oh my gosh, Gary, the bad internet, just don't even. Comcast and me, we were not getting along a couple weeks ago. Absolutely. A diffuser, like a hair diffuser thing, Allison, is that that's bright lighting, or maybe you're doing like the air diffuser, bright lighting, children. Melissa, I love that. Yes, just distractions, right? Essential oils might be a positive environmental piece. Absolutely. I know for me, natural light, fresh air, those are environmental pieces that really, really matter. When I'm in a room with just that, whatever those not natural lights are, brutal. Also, if it's too hot, I'm out. So this is another one. Sometimes if you just stop and like look around your environment, is this adding to my overall mental wellness, or is this distracting from it in some way? Right, the natural lights for a lot of us, and then we go into an office where the lighting isn't natural, Or even if you're working in and your lighting's not good and you're straining your eyes, you don't even realize you're straining your eyes until later when you have a pounding headache and you go, oh, well, no wonder, because, um, I was straining my eyes all day. But even sometimes looking at something in your room that you like to look at that attracts your eye, that actually there's a lot of evidence that that elevates your mental health and your mood. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. The next one is the physical influencer. And this is related to your health, to sleep, to your body image, to injuries, illness. Think about this. How many of you have like had a great day when you have the stomach flu? Anybody? Like, oh, this is the best day I've ever had. I have the stomach flu. I don't know about all of you, but whenever I've had the stomach flu, I've asked for like God to take me, like just make it end, because it's so miserable. And it influences everything. If some of you have had COVID, hopefully no one seriously, it's absolutely a distractor. Think about, again, a glass of water, some fresh air, movement. This influencer causes stress when your body isn't able to function in an optimal manner. So go ahead and share in the chat where this might show up for you as either, again, a positive or a negative. If I don't get out for a walk every day, like really, it's not pretty. It's really, I'm a bear. That physical activity is so key for me. So go ahead in the chat, what's for the physical influencer, what helps, what distracts. I don't know, but like even angry is a word for a reason. It is a good word. It's a true word. It absolutely, how can you concentrate if you're hungry? I mean, just don't even, right? Or I know a lot of people physically uncomfortable desks or chairs, or they've been sitting all day. Exactly, Corey. Like, I did the first few weeks of COVID, I looked at my phone, it tracks my steps. And the first couple weeks of COVID, my phone pretty much said, Lisa, you're dead, right? Like you haven't moved. We're sitting too long for sure. Walking absolutely helps. Worthless, distracting emails. It pulls that's like got a bunch of the influencers in it, right? It pulls us physically, emotionally, environmentally, all of it for sure. So think about throughout the day, sometimes just getting up and moving for 5 minutes can really help with your mental wellness, with managing stress. It's very hard if you're in a high stress reaction to just be sitting here and think you're going to release it like this. You're not. It's going to just kind of coagulate in your body. Coagulate, I don't know, but it's going to really hit your body hard. So thinking about physically, what do I want to do to feel physically better? The studies around kids' eyes from looking at screens, but also we're seeing a lot of young people with the hunchbacks, because they're now, all of you, because I said that, you're sitting up straight. I know it. I don't even have to see you, and I know it. Because we're hunching over, we're leaned over, and then we wonder why our necks hurt, why our heads hurt, because we're not really physically being aware of what's going on with our bodies. That's a big one. Let's look at the next influencer. The next one is the social influencer. And again, if you're probably thinking, hopefully you're thinking that over COVID, all 6 of these influencers have been in play. This is a big one. There've just been heart-wrenching studies of how isolated and lonely people have been through COVID, especially people who still can't fully go out because they're immunocompromised in some way. The social influencer we were meant to be social beings, and not seeing people, not talking to them, not touching people really affects us. This one is externally focused. It can be related to introversion and extroversion. So if you're getting too much social time, my 2 boys are true introverts, and they loved actually COVID. It was perfect for them. My daughter, who's an extrovert, was going a little crazy. It really was hard for her. Introverts they weren't complaining that much about the lockdowns. The social influencer is dramatically has been dramatically affected over COVID, and really has affected our children as well. So our awareness of this and efforts to change this do really matter. How can we connect with people? You could do, friend groups, Zoom calls, things like that, social distancing events, less now than before, though I know the numbers are going up. The social influencer causes stress when our social conditions are not optimal for you, or when other people's energy affects your own energy. So in the chat, go ahead and share how the social influencer might be in play for you now, or maybe during COVID. Thoughts on the social influencer. My husband showed me the saddest article recently that about 12%, and that number is supposedly very low, low and inaccurate. About 12% of Americans say they have no friends at all. And again, based on the study, probably more people would say that's true. That's really heart-wrenching, because for many people, loneliness is being lonely really adds to your stress and increases your chance of mental illness. Any thoughts on the social influencer? There's like a fine balance for all of us, and knowing what your fine balance is regarding connecting with people and disconnecting with people is a crucial part of really managing that influencer. Okay, let me share this last one with you. Yeah, with kids, understanding your kids, and especially with, there's been on and off with school and everything. Being really aware and helping your kids with this is so important. Also honoring when I would try to get my boys to do things socially, they would be like, we actually like not being social. Yeah, Kylie, reconnected with friends with more outdoor focus. I think for many of us Chicagoans, for sure, winter was tough, especially Omicron was really high in the middle of the winter. Because it was hard to socialize indoors, especially if you were being careful. My husband and I have 4 older relatives. We're very careful. That was really tough. Let's see, Kylie, modulating social expectations of others with honoring health concerns. Yes, there's so much to balance here. We have 2 weddings coming up, and the COVID numbers are going up, and again, we have older relatives. And it's finding that balance of connecting with people, but being safe. And there's a lot to think about. It is very stressful. It really, really is. Okay, let's look at the last influencer. And the last influencer is the emotional influencer. Most of us have learned to react to our emotions and we see our emotions as inconvenient, versus really thinking about and observing our emotions as powerful indicators of what's going on in our lives. Emotions, there are no good and bad emotions, none. They are all part of the human experience. And when we learn to hear them and listen to them and acknowledge our emotions, we have the opportunity to manage our mental health and our stress so much more. I know we live in a society that actually says, don't feel this, don't feel bad, don't feel sad, don't grieve. That's bad advice. And I typically try not to judge advice, but that's bad advice. Looking at every emotion that comes up for you and really looking at it without judgment is the key to mental health and mental wellness and managing your stress. So the emotional influencer causes stress when you feel as if your needs, your desires, your expectations are not being met, or when you encounter a situation that you don't understand, or when you don't know how to effectively deal with your emotions. One of the key things of coaching and therapy and why they work so well and why they're so powerful is because it is an absolute safe space to have any emotion that you want. And I don't know about you, I'm going to make my mom look really bad here, but none of you know her as far as I know. But even if you do, she'll admit this. How many of you grew up in an environment like this? I grew up in an environment where if I was getting upset about something, like I was about to cry or I was getting angry, my mom would walk over and she would pinch this part of my arm, like this big fatty part of my arm, and she would go, I'm going to give you something to cry about. She said it meaner than that. I'm kind of under. Yep, no tears. Yeah. So what does that teach me as a kid? It taught me to not have emotions, to shove them down, to not look at them. The greatest opportunity to struggle with your mental health is to ignore your feelings. And that's absolutely it. So the emotional influencer, I intentionally put it in last because it's the most important. Whatever you're feeling is fine. I used to say to my kids, you can have any feeling you want. You can't hit your brother, but you can have any feeling you want. So it's what we do with it matters, but any feeling is normal. It's part of being a human. And this is allowing ourselves to look at that, makes that influencer positive. Ignoring our feelings makes it an influencer that absolutely drains us. I can't tell you how many of my clients say, I don't feel that. I can't feel that. I'm ignoring that feeling. And I always say, well, yeah, how's that working for you? And they say, well, I'm exhausted, right? It's exhausting to ignore your feelings. It takes more energy to do that than to actually look at your feelings. Alex, same here. I'm seeing the young parents really validating their kids' feelings now. It's catching on, which is fantastic. When kids can identify their own feelings, and as they become adults, they're much more likely to handle their feelings. And so there's so many pieces to that. Let me ask you this question. Let me put my slide back up. Which influencer, oh my gosh. Oh, there we go. I'm not doing the Slido thing, so you could just answer in the chat. Which influencer do you think you experience most frequently? Which of the influencers do you think you experience most frequently? Spiritual, emotional, mental, social, environmental, physical. Which one do you think you experience the most frequently? Whether positive or negative, of the influencers. Social, what else? For better, for worse, right? Feels like all of them right now. Melissa, yes, it certainly does. Emotional, mental, emotional or mental. It's great information to know which of these are the most influential, which influencer influences you the most. To think about, does this influence me in a positive way, or is it draining me in some way? If it's draining me in some way, what can I do about it? That's really the big question you want to ask yourself. Let's see, emotional or mental, emotional and spiritual. Excellent. Let me just give you a quick, easy model to think about really your feelings, any of this, but the influencers as well. These are 3 disciplines for mental wellness. The first, I talked about this a little bit, is being fully aware of your experience, going through those 6 influencers and asking yourself, where do I stand on each of these? Full awareness. The second piece, and the piece that a lot of people struggle with, is acceptance. So I talked about acceptance related to your feelings. There's also acceptance about what is. When we go into a full acceptance state, then we can move into choice. We can move into conscious choice. If we don't have awareness and we don't have acceptance, we typically get into a reaction state versus a truly choosing something. So maybe an awareness that my back hurts. I've been sitting here too long. Accepting that, okay, I'm going to finish a call and this is really the situation, and I'm going to choose to move around in between. Or what I actually did is I bought a stand-up desk. So when my back starts to hurt, I can stand up. It's a simple example, but when you follow these 3 steps, it leads to much more mental wellness. So let me ask you this. This is something you can share in the chat if you'd like, is to think about a plan to incorporate those 3 disciplines and to manage the 6 influencers in your life so that you're feeling less stress and more mental wellness. So ask yourself the question, what's going on with me right now? What do I need right now to increase my motivation, increase my happiness, increase my energy? Really asking yourself this question throughout the day, especially when you're struggling in some area, and then figuring out, what do I need? Sometimes it's a glass of water. Sometimes it's, I need to get away from everybody at work and not talk to anyone. Sometimes it's, I want to call a friend, or I'm going to take a walk, or maybe I call a professional that I feel like I need some help. And so let's do this, and then I'll save some time for some questions here. I'll in the chat, what's one thing you can do right now? One thing you can do right now to manage the influencers, to improve your decrease your stress and increase your mental wellness. Gary, I block out negative people. I have same. I used to read the news first thing in the morning, like cover to cover of some of the news sources. Not anymore. I took the news out. I get enough of it. I don't need to read every word of it, which it was really starting my day on a super negative note. So have taken that out. So in the chat, what's one thing you can do to reduce stress and increase mental wellness? Water. Honest to God, I have my little Hydro Flask here. Again, product placement, clearly. I get nothing for this, by the way. Just sipping on it all day makes a big difference. It's super easy to get dehydrated, and so to watch for that. Kylie, a small change of location. If a problem, get up and move somewhere else, take a walk, take a break, wash my hands and think I'm washing away the problem. Love that. It's a very kinesthetic connection, like physically to do that. I love that plan. Susie, listen to music. I remember when my kids were little in that witching hour, 4 to 6, and I would just put on music and it would change my mood, it changed theirs. It's huge. Allow yourself to take time for yourself, Corey. I'm telling you, we need to call for the European. We're taking the summer off to take time for ourselves. We're not doing it enough. Let's see, Alex, I don't do the news or social media, right? My friends keep me as informed as I need to be. You don't need the details, trust me. Allison, this is really interesting. Go for a drive. I keep hearing from people that a lot of us aren't commuting the way we used to, either flying or driving. And that used to be our kind of processing, releasing some of the energy time. And some of us aren't doing that as much as we used to. I'm not saying we want long commutes, but just a little drive really is fantastic. Okay, what questions do you have? And I'll put my information up here as well. What questions do you have about anything that we covered here? Questions and or comments. Comments are always welcome. You can put in the chat. You can raise your virtual hand, and I think I can bring you up here, but I'm not fully sure that I can do that. What questions or comments on anything that we covered today around stress, the 6 influencers, mental health, mental illness, mental wellness, having a glass of water? Questions or comments on any of that? Yeah, and I think if you do raise your hand, I can make you a panelist, and you can ask a question that way too if you want. Any thoughts on any of this? All right, no? You're all going to go for a drive or a walk, or throw your social media out the door? Thanks, Susie. Let's see, Melissa, going back to the catabolic state, what's best practice to change your mindset quickly? So Melissa, this is a great question. Here's a little, this is a cognitive behavioral model. Our thoughts lead to our feelings, which lead to our behaviors. So a way to change your mindset quickly is to, what am I saying to myself? Ask the question, what am I saying to myself? How true is what I'm saying to myself? Because often we're not telling ourselves the truth. And then ask yourself the question, what's another way I can think about this? So, and then when you change that thought, so here's an example I did with a client today. She told me that her family doesn't like her and doesn't respect her. And I was like, okay, so how does she feel? She felt terrible. How was she showing up? She didn't even want to see them. So I said, how true is it that your family doesn't care about you? And she said, well, it's not, I know it's not true. It was just a moment in time. Okay, if that's not true, what's another thing you can say to yourself? And she said, well, my family cares about me. They were just not connecting in that moment. How does that make you feel? And then how does that make you show up? So you literally, it says reframe your thoughts, check them. Are they true? Are they accurate? If they're not accurate, change them. If they are accurate, what do you want to do about it? Is a good way to start the shift. Let's see. Kylie, thanks to broken up clearly. Sometimes I think if we just have like some easy things to follow, the stress seems less overwhelming, and we've got so much of it. So how can we break it down a little? Any other questions or comments? Corey, you left again. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I didn't know there were more questions, but
they popped up as you popped up. They popped up.
Yes, that's how it happens. Yeah, does anybody else have any other questions? This is very helpful. A great kind of launching pad for a lot of us to see what stresses out and like make it more tangible, to find out what things are affecting us throughout the day and in our lives.
Yeah, I think it does help. And, some of it we can't control, but a lot of it we can. So, we can control how we take care of ourselves. Kylie's asking, and how can they look at, watch the recording?
Yeah, we'll post a link to the recording for sure, because this is like very helpful for everybody, everyone in the world. Especially
right, exactly. Well, right. Mostly as Susie's asking about thoughts about yoga and meditation. I mean, if they work for you and you want to do them, by all means. What has happened, I think, a little bit with the yoga and meditation, certainly meditation is, a lot of people will be like, meditation's the answer to everything. But if you don't like to meditate, it's not the answer for you. So I always say, what's your version of meditations? For some people, it's like sitting, and for some people, it's taking a run or napping. You know what I mean? So I think we find what works for you and use it, but don't force yourself into something that's not a good fit. Yeah.
Okay, and then we'll also post your information, so people, if they have more questions or want to deep dive into these things, that'd be great.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. This has been great. This has really been eye-opening and hopefully helped everyone who's been watching this. So thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Since I have control, I should end the thing as well.
You can end it. Yeah.
Corey gave me full control of the webinar. I'm sure he might not be happy about that. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks,
Okay.
Lisa.
Bye-bye.
Bye.